This is the Retirement Bullpen with Richard Warner. The team at Warner Financial Solutions want to help you feel confident about your retirement, no matter where you stand. Get more at warnerfinancialsolutions.com. Now, the Retirement Bullpen.
Welcome back to the Retirement Bullpen. We are diving into part 2 of our series on the silver tsunami. If you missed the first one, go back and give it a listen. But we're diving into the fact that 10 million baby boomer-owned businesses will be going on the market. It's worth nearly $10 trillion, and they're expected to change hands over the next few years. But this silver tsunami is indeed that. There are some waves, and you got to know how to ride them. And here to walk us through these tsunami waters, or perhaps we should say float through these tsunami waters, is our host, Richard Warner. Richard is an investment advisor representative, certified retirement income professional, and owner of Warner Financial Solutions. You can learn more about Richard and his team at warnerfinancialsolutions.com. Richard, always a pleasure to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Alyssa.
Of course. So we're diving into part 2 of this. In the first episode, we talked about what business owners need to do to be ready to make sure that they have a business that's actually valued at what they perceive it to be. And we talked about the pitfalls of sort of customer relationships. And if you have a founder-based business as opposed to a service-based business, how that can put some roadblocks in your sale plans. But now we want to talk about when we've actually made the sale. And now we've got that lump sum of money. And what do we do? Because we're used to working however many hours a week. Entrepreneurs put a ton of work in. And now we've got our money. We're preparing for a different lifestyle. How do we make sure Uncle Sam doesn't take all of our hard-earned money? Let's start there.
Ooh, that's a big question. So
I knew you could do it. I know you believe in you.
Let's start off with a quick side note to that. So as a business owner, so for those of you hopefully listening that maybe aren't within 3 to 5 years, maybe you've got 10 or 20 years, you have a lot of tax advantage strategies from the tax standpoint that you could utilize to put money away for retirement outside of whatever you get out of your business someday, that I would really encourage you to look into, because it can save you money on tax dollars now. It could save you tax dollars later on, depending upon whether you go the pre-tax or post-tax, the Roth direction. But there's lots of avenues where you as a business owner can save, and you can put significant dollars away because you are self-employed. But we're talking specifically today about the business owner that maybe has done a little of that. Maybe she's done a little of that, but they're getting ready to sell their business. It's finalizing. They're going to be in possession of large sums of money. What do we do?
Right.
Well, there's actually a lot of things you can do. And it really should start in that process back when you begin going down this road of building the value of your business. You should also start building a plan of how you're going to do that, because it should be in conjunction. So for example, there are some strategies that in the sale of the business, I won't get into technical terms and that sort of thing today, but I'm just going to talk about concepts. There's some strategies that as you are in the process of selling, where you can get tax advantages in that process as you're selling to the potential buyers. Typically tends to be employee-based, or it could be a family-based sale. So an intergenerational type of transfer can create some tax benefits as well. Obviously, we want to get your attorney involved or get an attorney involved. When we take people through this process, it's very much a team approach. So there's going to be people like that involved. So on the front end, it's something you want to consider. Okay. Now, maybe you're past that point. Maybe you have this 7-figure or 8-figure number, or maybe bigger, that you're getting paid because you're selling your business, and it's a big tax hit if you don't do something. Well, there's a couple of different strategies you can utilize that can spread out your payments. You could also potentially spread them out with the buyer. Again, you're taking on a little more risk doing it that way, but sometimes you can get more bang for your buck and pay less taxes. So in the end, you get a lot more money net. Because if you make a $10 million transaction and you just take that $10 million, well, the IRS is taking a big chunk of that.
Yeah.
Any way you can spread that out or structure it so that you can reduce taxes or control taxes as you withdraw them from the account or the trust. For example, you can set up a trust in some situations to transfer this into and pull out the funds as needed, which minimizes your tax liability on the overall action, but just as you pull and need them, and you can inside there manage the funds and have the funds managed or all sorts of different things to generate the type of return in revenue that you would want to come out of that. So there's a lot of things that can be done, but it all starts with planning. The one thing you don't want to do if you can avoid it is just, hey, I got a $10 million check. I'm just going to go cash that, put that on my 1099 this year for my tax people. And you're probably given, I don't even want to throw out estimates, but probably close to 40% of that back to Uncle Sam in a lot of different forms. So depending upon how it's structured and what you did, it could be a little less than that, but it's an expensive transaction to do it that way. Anything you can do to minimize that is worth the cost and effort because it could be substantial.
And ideally, you want to start having those conversations long before the sale happens so that you can plan accordingly, not wait until after the sale is done, because then you're very limited on what you can do.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of I've sold my business. I'm used to, getting up my Monday through Friday. And certainly all retirees face this to a certain extent. But there's something special about being the entrepreneur where, and you are one where you have your own business and it's your baby, if you will. And there's the psychology shift to I now have to pass this baton to somebody else and trust that they will care for it. And then on the flip side, I now have to take this lump sum of money and turn that into my income for the next 30 years. Ideally, we hope we live a nice long retirement. How do we make that mental shift and what things do we need to be thinking about as we're making that mental shift?
So I'm going to use myself as an example, and then maybe you can peel some questions off of that more specific to what you're thinking. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm self-employed. I'm a financial advisor, but I'm a business owner as well.
Right.
And I have a retirement plan. I have a strategy in place for someday if I have to. What do I mean by that? I don't really ever want to retire. It's the way I'm geared. Okay. I want to do something. There's no me step out this door and go sit on the couch and watch Family Feud every day for the rest of my life scenario that I ever want any part of. Okay. And I'm not putting people down that think that's fun.
Sure.
That's just not me. And my feeling is the vast majority of entrepreneurs, business owners are that way. That's why we own our own business, is because we're driven, we're motivated, we want to achieve things. We like to do something. We like to keep busy. There's just a lot of those aspects built into us. So the first hurdle I think a lot of business owners, when they go down this road, have to overcome is, what am I going to do with my time? A lot of time your spouse, doesn't matter male or female, whether it's your husband or wife, your spouse is probably a little bit different than you because typically opposites attract. I'm not trying to be stereotypical, but that's typically true.
Sure.
So she or he has all kinds of plans about what you're going to do.
The honey-do list is very long.
But you may not, that might not be your dream retirement. Obviously, you got to come to some kind of agreement between you, but it's also important to get them involved. They should be involved in this business transition process because it affects them just as much as it affects you. So what are you and that person, assuming there is another one, most people there is, what that person going to do when you retire? How are you going to spend your time? You got to figure that out on the front end or you're going to drive each other crazy. Then, yes, you got to figure out how to take that money and turn it into predictability because you've been living in a certain lifestyle. You have certain expectations of how you want to spend money, things you want to do, and most people don't want to scale that down. Inside that lifestyle plan, you want to create a financial plan that steers you in the direction of molding together, if you will, the desires of what you and your significant other want to do in retirement or when you're not working anymore, and meet the financial assets that you have and the income that you're going to have from that going forward. And that's going to vary from person to person. So ideally, you can build the value of your business up to sell it for enough to meet any kind of gaps you have on top of that planning you're doing.
You touched exactly upon what I wanted to on the psychological part, because I do think entrepreneurs are unique in that they own businesses for a reason. They are, exactly as you said, they're go-getters. They want to be very hands-on. They want to be doing and moving forward. And so I know my dad is the same way. He's 75 and still a practicing veterinarian. And I think he will be until he can't be, because it's what he loves to do. And he would never be content just sitting on the couch watching television, to your point. Talk to me about why I got my $3 million, I'm just going to, withdraw from it as I need, is not considered a feasible retirement plan.
There's a lot of factors involved. Number one, a lot of people retire and manage wealth the way they did when they accumulated, or in a lot of business owner scenario, they maybe didn't have a lot of side wealth. Most of their value was in the business. So they never managed wealth on their own, period. They've managed a business. They've run a business. It's completely different though. So how you invest, they may be used to taking risks. Risking in your investments for retirement is not necessarily a bad thing as long as it's put together and mirrored with some safe alternatives. Because when you are drawing money out of an account over time, there is something that every investor, whether you've worked for a company for 40 years or owned a business for 40 years, has to deal with, and that's called sequence of return risk. And the market goes up and the market goes down. Just because your portfolio historically has earned 8% does not mean you can draw 8% off of it and get that exact return every single year and it's going to last forever. A lot of people assume if I have $3 million and I get 10% return, that means I can pull $300,000 out every single year and it'll never run out. I'll always have that $3 million.
Right.
If you got the 10% every single year, that's true. But the 10% doesn't happen every year. Some years it goes up 20, 30. Some years it goes down 20, 30. When you start pulling funds out when it's down 20 or 30, you are technically selling shares on sale, which means you're eating up shares a lot faster than you would be when you're pulling shares out when it's up or flat.
Right.
So this begins eating away at the principal, essentially cutting the head off the goose that's laying the golden egg before the golden egg is laid. It starts depleting over time the asset that was generating the income. So you have to strategize in your retirement income plan of having a place to draw. Really simply, if you can imagine two buckets in your mind, a place where money can come out no matter what's going on in the market, you know you can't lose. It can only go up. It's going to be a little more conservative in nature, but it can only go up, but it can't lose. Versus having another bucket where I can draw on this one anytime the market is doing well. And let's be honest, most years, historically, 3 out of 4 years, the market has done well when you look at the S&P 500. But there's those years it doesn't. And sometimes when it doesn't, it's really bad. And it can really affect your return and the longevity of your account. So you need a place to go when the market is not performing the way you would like it to be.
So just like you needed a plan when you had a business, whether it was your marketing plan or your customer appreciation plan, you need a financial plan even when you leave the business to make sure that that lump sum of money doesn't get lost. I want to wrap it up. We often joke that part of your job, even though you don't have the title of therapist, you always have an emotional component to working with clients because you're dealing with them at some of their biggest life changes. It's retiring. It's leaving a job that they've known. It could be a divorce. It could be a death of a family member and they've inherited money and they're coming to see you. There is the emotional component to financial planning. How do you help business owners especially deal with the emotional aspect of letting go of something that they have, essentially nurtured from the beginning? It's their business baby.
That's different in every situation. Sometimes it's really easy helping somebody understand, but yes, it's definitely a process you have to take them through. Sometimes it's so difficult that you have to bring in a life coach or a business coach to help walk them through. In most cases, most people, if you can get them to the point of seeing their purpose was this for all these years. Now their purpose is going to be XYZ instead of ABC, whatever that might be for them.
Sure.
That new purpose their drive can be utilized for that new purpose. The problem really lies in when people don't outline what that purpose is when they make the transition, because most business owners in the first year of sale actually regret selling their business because they didn't do the proper personal and lifestyle planning, not necessarily the business planning, but the personal and the lifestyle planning. So they successfully sold their business. They beat the odds there, but then they got out and most of them wish they hadn't have.
Wow.
Because they didn't take those steps. So how do you do it? It varies from person to person, but I will say this, it is very, very important that you do it. Because if you don't know why you're leaving what you're leaving and what you're going to utilize to replace that energy, replace that effort, to replace those emotions, because that business is your baby. I mean, it really is. Even if it was an ugly baby, it's still your baby. And you may not want to give it up.
Right.
So you got to have something very strong and motivating that allow you to take on a new chapter, a new act, if you will, and let that last one go.
Is that part of the conversation that you have with clients when they come in and sit down with you talking about selling a business?
Yes, that is at the very front end of this whole process, whether you're somebody retiring from a company, whether you're somebody retiring as a business owner, the idea is you got to know where you're going from here before we can create any kind of plan to get you there. So part of it is spending, part of it is income, but a lot of it, what are you going to do with your time? What do you enjoy? What are you after? Because if you have, let's say, a heart for giving or helping or whatever, we may need to earmark funds in tax strategic ways, for example, that could benefit you with charitable giving or so forth. Just an example, but
Sure.
knowing what that person is after and trying to accomplish what's important to them really drives how we can create a financial plan to fit that lifestyle.
Retirement is so multifaceted, and especially so when you add the sale of a business to the equation. So if you're looking for someone to help walk you through that transition, sit down, have a conversation with Richard. You can do so by heading to his website, warnerfinancialsolutions.com, schedule a complimentary consultation, and get the dialogue started. Richard, it's always a pleasure to chat with you about these topics and the many, many topics that we've covered over our sessions, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks.
We'll see you next time.
Insurance products are offered to the insurance business Warner Financial. Warner Financial is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth, LLC, IPW, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Warner Financial are not subject to investment advisor requirements. NPN number 7617022. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be considered as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Warner Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Warner Financial.